Re-encountering someone who was once fundamental in your life can be one of the most complicated and emotionally charged moments. Have you ever caught yourself imagining what it would be like to see someone who betrayed your trust again? The expectation of definitive answers can turn into a whirlwind of unanswered questions. Betrayal is not just a blow to the heart, but also a labyrinth of uncertainties that destabilizes our deepest certainties. In this reunion, what seemed like an opportunity for closure can turn into a new crossroads. How to deal with emotional chaos and find peace when the truth is so elusive. Let's explore how to face these situations and find a path to understanding and healing.
Ben was in his apartment in San Francisco, adjusting his tie with an air of disdain. The reflection in the mirror showed a successful man, but the wrinkles on his forehead betrayed the restlessness that dwelled within him. He remembered the upcoming party, a celebration organized by a longtime friend. What should have been a night of fun and relaxation made him anxious. It was the kind of event where past memories could resurface, and he didn't want to think about the possibility of seeing Julia. Julia. Her name still had the power to trigger an avalanche of memories. The first love, the girl he loved with the purity of childhood. He recalled how, in those sunny summer days, they ran through the park, laughing and dreaming about the future. But life took care of separating their paths. Julia had moved to another city, taking a part of his heart with her. He took a deep breath, trying to push away the thoughts that tormented him. There's no point in reliving what is past, he thought, but the memories wouldn't fade so easily. Meanwhile, in a small studio in San Francisco, Julia was getting ready for the same party. She looked at herself in the mirror, analyzing the reflection staring back at her. The red dress she chose made her feel confident, but the insecurity that accompanied her was undeniable. Behind the shine of makeup and the rehearsed smile, memories of Ben flooded in like a wave. It was impossible not to think of him, especially as a social event approached. What would he be doing now? Did he still hate her for leaving? Or perhaps he never cared? "You can do this, Julia," she said to herself, trying to convince herself that everything was fine. But the truth was that, deep down, the pain of separation still affected her. She remembered how perfect and, at the same time, painful it had been. "Life took us in different directions," she whispered as she adjusted her hair. However, how could she ignore what she felt? What is love, if not an eternal reminder of what could have been? The party started to come alive, and the guests mingled in an environment of laughter and loud music. Ben arrived with a formal smile, greeting friends and acquaintances. As he walked through the hall, a weight on his chest made him hesitate. The atmosphere was filled with expectation and, at the same time, a certain relief at being surrounded by people who admired him. But with every face he saw, the worry grew. What if she was there? On the other side of the room, Julia entered, her gaze searching for familiar faces in the crowd. Her heart raced as she found a group of friends. Take a deep breath, it's just another party, she thought. But when Ben and Julia's eyes finally met, the world around them seemed to disappear. Time stopped, and they were paralyzed as if reality had been interrupted. Ben couldn't hide the surprise that invaded his face, while Julia tried to gather the courage to smile. "Julia," he finally said, breaking the silence. His voice had the same tone she remembered, and it made her feel a lump in her throat. "Hi, Ben," she replied, trying to maintain composure, though her heart pounded fiercely. The surroundings became a blur, and conversations turned into distant murmurs. Ben noticed how Julia's face, though marked by time, still reflected the beauty that had enchanted him in his youth. But at the same time, there was a fragility in her eyes that made him hesitate. "How long?" he murmured, searching for the right words. "Almost an eternity," Julia responded with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. The tone of the conversation was charged with palpable tension, as if both knew that this meeting was not just a simple reunion, but the beginning of a conversation that should have happened years ago. "You look well," he said, trying to break the ice, but the sincerity in his voice made it clear that there was much more behind that phrase. "Thank you. And you? Successful lawyer, I see," Julia replied, forcing a lightness that didn't exist. The two were trapped in an emotional labyrinth, trying to navigate the memories and wounds of the past. Ben wanted to ask about her life, about what she had done in the past years, but the words seemed stuck in his throat. And behind the smile, Julia wondered if he still saw her as the dreamy girl from long ago. The party buzzed with laughter and lively conversations, but for Ben and Julia, the environment seemed shrouded in a fog of discomfort. The glances exchanged between them were like arrows, loaded with a history that, though distant, still provoked wounds. After a long silence, Ben broke the barrier of awkwardness. "Do you remember that time we went to the park and you challenged me to climb that tree?" he asked, forcing a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Julia hesitated, the memory hitting her like a wave of nostalgia. "Yes, and you almost broke your arm trying to reach the top." She gave a little laugh, but her tone was bitter. "I always said you weren't cut out for adventures." Ben frowned, a slight tone of resentment in his voice. "And you were always afraid to take risks, weren't you? That's why you pulled away." He didn't want to be cruel, but the words slipped out. Julia's expression hardened. "You can't just throw that blame on me, Ben. I followed my path because you didn't believe in my dreams." The words came out loaded with repressed emotion, as if a lid had been removed from a container full of pain. Ben sighed, trying to control the frustration building up inside him. "I had my own dreams, Julia. You weren't the only one who gave up on things." The tension between them intensified, like a rope about to snap. At that moment, a mutual friend, Lucas, approached, sensing the heavy atmosphere. He tried to calm things down. "Hey guys, how about we talk about something lighter?" he suggested, with a nervous smile. "How about reminiscing about the old times? You two were always so inseparable." Julia looked at Lucas, her expression softening for a moment. That was a long time ago. She averted her gaze as if she wanted to protect herself from more wounds. Ben, however, didn't let himself be distracted. "What do you mean by that? That we should forget everything that happened between us?" The indignation in his voice was palpable. "No, but maybe we should leave the past where it belongs." Julia responded, her voice trembling. There was an abyss between them that seemed impossible to bridge. Lucas, realizing he was only making things worse, decided to step back. "I'll get a drink. You guys work this out." He walked away, leaving the air even more charged. Ben and Julia remained silent, the party music echoing in the background. Each was lost in their thoughts, struggling with unresolved memories and feelings. Finally, Julia broke the silence again. "You know, I always thought that coming back to San Francisco would be easy, that everything could be like before." She said, the vulnerability in her voice was undeniable. "And you thought I'd be waiting for you? That I hadn't moved on?" Ben's defense was instinctive, but there was a touch of pain in his voice. "No, I didn't think that. But the truth is, life took us in different directions." She looked at him, her eyes shining with contained emotion. "And it hurts." Frustrated, Ben decided he needed a moment to himself. He said goodbye to Julia with a nod, feeling the weight of her gaze on his back as he headed to the balcony. The illuminated city before him was a mesmerizing spectacle, but his heart was heavy. He took a deep breath, trying to organize his thoughts, remembering all the promises he had made to himself about the future. The cold night wind ruffled his hair as he contemplated the flickering lights below. Ben felt a mixture of anger and sadness, an internal battle between the desire to win Julia back and the fear of more disappointments. What could have been if circumstances had been different? The question tormented him, but the truth was that the past could not be changed, and he was stuck in a moment that seemed to have no end. Suddenly, a shadow appeared beside him. It was Julia, hesitating before approaching. The silence between them was thick, but there was a faint hope that maybe, just maybe, there was still a way forward. The fresh night breeze enveloped Ben and Julia as they stood on the balcony, a space that, despite being a temporary refuge in the midst of the party, had become an emotional battlefield. Julia, hesitant, broke the silence. "You never believed in my dreams, Ben. You always told me it was a waste of time." Her words were like blades, cutting through the tense air between them. Ben felt the blow but didn't let himself be defeated. He took a deep breath, searching for the right words. "And you? When I needed you most, you were far away. You never cared about what I was going through." His voice, though controlled, carried the pain of a past that still echoed in their hearts. Julia crossed her arms, her defensiveness rising. I was trying to find my way, just like you, but you always had such a limited view of what I could be. You only saw the artist, not the woman I wanted to be. The atmosphere between them heated up, the wounds of the past resurfacing with force. Ben clenched his fists, struggling against the memories of nights when he felt small in the face of Julia's aspirations. And you never thought of me as someone who could be your support? I was there, waiting for you to come back and say you believed in us. But you never gave me reasons to believe, Ben, Julia exclaimed, her eyes shining with a mixture of anger and sadness. You became this person so focused on your career that you seemed to forget who you were. And I didn't want to be a burden. A heavy silence fell between them, and the city's light reflected in the tears that threatened to fall from Julia's face. Ben, in turn, looked at the horizon, searching for a way to ease the growing tension between them. I really didn't realize how it affected you. I just wanted you to succeed. Success? What if I didn't just want to be an artist? What if I wanted to be a happy person by your side? The desperation in Julia's voice was palpable, the vulnerability exposed in every word. You never gave me that option. The tension was at its peak, and both could feel that despite all the pain, a thread of love still existed between them. But the wound was deep, and trust seemed unattainable. At that moment, Julia's phone vibrated in her pocket, interrupting the emotionally charged conversation. She looked at the screen, and the color drained from her face. No, it can't be. Her voice trembled as she read the message. The gallery, it was vandalized. The last word came out in an anguished whisper, as if the air had been sucked out of her lungs. Ben, immediately concerned, stepped closer. What happened? His voice was soft but firm, trying to offer comfort amidst the chaos unfolding before them. Julia looked at him, her expression a mixture of shock and frustration. It's a disaster. They're saying the works were damaged, and I don't know how I'm going to fix this. Tears finally streamed down her face, and Ben felt his heart tighten. Let's go. I'll go with you, he said, deciding at that moment that the pain of the past no longer mattered. You don't have to face this alone. Julia hesitated, but the sincerity in Ben's eyes made her relent. Would you really do that for me? Of course. We both know that despite everything, we still have a bond, and I'm not going to let you go through this alone. With a hesitant nod, Julia agreed, and together they left the balcony, the tension between them now replaced by a new purpose. The party continued in the background, but for them, the world had shrunk to the urgency of supporting each other in moments of crisis. As they walked out of the event, a part of Julia felt grateful to have Ben by her side again, even if it was amidst chaos. They didn't know what the future held, but at that moment, a new opportunity for reconnection was about to open up before them. Julia's art gallery was a vibrant space, full of colors and emotions, but at that moment, the scene was desolate. The traces of vandalism were still visible on the walls. The paintings that once conveyed life now seemed to scream for help. Ben and Julia entered, and he could feel the tension in the air, heavy like a cloud about to burst. We need to start cleaning this up, Ben said, trying to sound optimistic as he looked around, searching for the best way to help. Julia nodded, but her gaze was distant, lost in the shadows of the past. I don't know if it's worth it, she murmured, her hands trembling slightly. Maybe I should just give up on everything. The statement cut Ben like a blade. He turned to her, his eyes wide with surprise. Give up, Julia. You can't be serious. You've always had so much talent, so much passion. Look at what you've created here. He gestured to the works that, despite the damage, still shone with the essence of their creator. This is part of who you are. And who am I now? She stepped back, her arms crossed in a defensive gesture. Do you know what this is? It's the result of years of struggle, and now all of that is gone. I can't do it anymore. The despair in her voice made Ben feel a tightness in his chest. I know it's hard, but you need to remember why you started. People need your art. I need your art, Ben replied, his voice softer. He recalled how Julia used painting to express herself when words failed. You can't let a situation like this define your future. Easy for you to say, Ben. You have a solid career, a clear path. I don't have any of that. What I do is unstable, uncertain. And honestly, sometimes I wonder if you really believe in what I do. Her look was a mix of pain and anger, and Ben felt the frustration grow inside him. How can you think that? I've always believed in you, Julia. You were always so determined, so full of life. Why do you think I pulled away? Because I didn't want to hold you back. I was afraid that my choices would prevent you from flying. You pulled away because you didn't believe in me when I needed you most. And now, look where we are. Her voice rose, and the echo of the argument reverberated through the empty gallery walls. You can't put that on me, Julia, Ben exclaimed, his patience wearing thin. I had my dreams too, and I got lost along the way too, but that doesn't mean you should give up on yours. Silence settled between them, dense and suffocating. Julia looked at the floor, her eyes brimming with tears. I just wish we had faced all this together. Now it feels like we're in different worlds. Maybe we should try to find each other again, Ben suggested, his voice now calmer. He stepped forward, seeking her gaze. I want to support you. Really. I want you to know that no matter what happens, I'm here. You say that, but... Julia hesitated. The vulnerability in her tone was palpable. You can't understand what it's like to be in this place, not knowing if it's worth moving forward. You don't know what it means to have to start from scratch. Of course I know, Ben replied, sincerity in his eyes. I too have faced challenges I thought I'd never overcome. And here I am, trying to find a way. The difference is, I didn't give up. And you shouldn't either. She took a deep breath, trying to process her emotions. What should have been a moment of union and healing seemed to be turning into a new wound. Julia looked at the damaged canvas, the art she had created, and a tear slid down her face. I don't know if I can, Ben. Then let's do it together. Let's fix this, he said, extending his hand in a gesture of support. You're not alone. You never were. But before she could respond, Julia turned, leaving the gallery and Ben behind. The sound of the door closing echoed like a sign that the battle was not yet won. He felt the frustration grow, but also a renewed determination. He needed to change his approach, learn to listen more, to be less dominant in conversations. Julia deserved that. She deserved everything. And above all, she deserved to know that there was still a way forward. In the days following the tumultuous reunion at the gallery, Ben dedicated himself to a new purpose. He was determined to rebuild not just his image in Julia's eyes, but also his own perception of who he was. Working on social projects, Ben got involved with local artists and started volunteering at an organization that helped young talents express themselves through art. He believed that by doing this, he would show Julia that there was a side of him she had never known, a side that valued the creativity and passion he had previously ignored. On a sunny afternoon, while organizing an art exhibition at a community center, Ben saw a group of children painting colorful murals on the exterior walls. Their enthusiasm was contagious. He remembered how Julia used to talk about the joy of creating, and an involuntary smile formed on his face. "This is amazing," he exclaimed, approaching the group. Who came up with the idea to use these vibrant colors? A little curly-haired girl, with an expression full of determination, raised her hand. "We did. Art should be happy, just like us." Her response made Ben laugh and reflect on the purity of the children's vision. He knew he needed to bring that energy back to Julia, who was feeling lost and unappreciated. Meanwhile, Julia was trying to recover from the vandalism that had hit her gallery. The pain was still fresh, but she was determined not to let it bring her down. With the help of friends and colleagues, she began planning a new exhibition, looking for ways to channel her frustration through art. The nights were long, spent between brushes and canvases as she fought against her insecurities. "I need to show everyone that I'm standing again," she murmured to herself as she applied a new layer of paint to her masterpiece. The new collection took shape, and each piece was a reflection of her emotional journey. However, even at the height of her creation, memories of the past haunted her. The lack of support she had felt from Ben still echoed in her mind. Why did he never believe in me? She questioned herself as she looked at the paintings that depicted her internal struggle. Finally, the day of the exhibition arrived. The space was filled with visitors and friends, all admiring Julia's works. Ben, nervous, entered the gallery, his heart racing as he spotted Julia amidst the crowd. She was radiant, but there was a shadow in her eyes that worried him. He approached, his desire to support her and reconnect with her pulsing strongly in his chest. "Julia, your works are incredible," he said, trying to hide his insecurity. "They capture so much emotion." Julia looked at him, a mix of surprise and emotion in her gaze. "Thank you, Ben. It means a lot to hear that from you." But the conversation soon became tense when Ben, in an attempt to connect, mentioned the vandalism. "I wish I had been there to help. You know I care." "Cared, but you were never present when I needed you most," Julia replied, her voice trembling slightly. "You were always so focused on your career that you forgot about me." Ben felt a pang of pain hearing her words. "I made a mistake, Julia. I let you go, and I never should have done that. But I'm here now, trying to be a better person. Better for who? For me, or for yourself?" Her frustration was palpable, and he could see that she was struggling with her own insecurities. "Do you really think I can just forget what happened between us?" "No, I don't expect you to forget, but I want us to move forward. I want to understand you, Julia. What can I do to support you?" Ben's sincerity touched her, but the wound was still open. Julia hesitated, her emotions raw. "I don't know if I can, Ben. Everything seems so complicated. What if I fail again?" "You won't fail," he replied firmly. "I'll be here for you no matter what happens. We all face challenges. The important thing is not to give up." The silence between them was heavy with unspoken meanings. Both knew there was still a long road ahead, but the connection they were beginning to rebuild seemed promising. Julia looked at her works and, for a brief moment, smiled. "Let's see what happens then." As the tension between Ben and Julia hung in the air, an old rival of Ben's, Marco, appeared unexpectedly. He approached with a sarcastic smile, his eyes gleaming with a mix of malice and satisfaction. "Look who's here, the lawyer from San Francisco and his sweet artist. What an emotional moment, isn't it?" The irony in his voice was palpable, and Julia immediately felt her stomach churn. She knew well the history between the three. "Marco, what are you doing here?" Ben asked, trying to stay calm, but his voice betrayed a slight tremor. Julia watched as the tension built up between them, like a storm about to break. "I just came to see how you two are doing. It seems like your lives aren't as perfect as you thought," Marco said with a provocative look. "Julia, are you still trying to make art, or have you already given up on your dreams again?" His words were like daggers, and Julia felt the heat of shame rise to her face. "Enough, Marco," Ben exclaimed, stepping forward. "You have nothing to do with this. Stay out of our lives." The anger and defensiveness in his voice were evident, and Julia realized he was fighting to protect what was left between them. "Oh, but I do. Remember that exhibition that was sabotaged? I was so excited to see what the art gallery from the past had to offer," Marco said with a victorious smile. "It's a shame someone decided to ruin it. What was it again? Vandalism? Or just poorly made art?" Julia felt as if the ground had opened up beneath her feet. "Do you know something about this?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. A part of her wanted to believe he was just playing with her emotions, but the way he looked at her made her doubt. "I think everyone knows. The question is, who can prove it?" Marco said, shrugging, satisfied with provoking. Ben couldn't take it anymore. "If you're implying that you had something to do with the vandalism, I'll do whatever it takes to uncover the truth," he declared, now with a firmness that Julia hadn't seen before. It was as if he had awakened from a long sleep, ready to fight for what really mattered. "Oh, Ben, do you really think your legal tricks will work against me? The city is full of secrets, and I know some that might interest you," Marco taunted, even more confident. At that moment, Julia realized the situation was about to escalate. "Marco, you can't keep doing this. If you have something to say it now," she challenged, feeling a wave of bravery mixed with fear. "I can give you some advice. Stay away from Ben. He's not who you think he is. And what happened to your gallery? It wasn't just a coincidence," Marco said, his tone disdainful. "If I were you, I'd think twice before trusting him again." Marco's words echoed in Julia's mind, making her feel torn. But looking at Ben, she realized he was as determined to face the rival as she was to confront her own insecurities. What Marco was saying was just an attempt to sow discord. Ben, realizing the effect Marco's words had on Julia, turned to her, the expression of determination on his face. "Don't listen to him, Julia. I know we made mistakes. But that doesn't define who we are now. What really matters is that we're here, together. Let's face this. At that moment, Marco, realizing that his provocation wasn't having the desired effect, decided to back off. "Well then, good luck, Ben. You'll need it," he said with a malevolent smile before walking away, leaving the atmosphere charged with tension. As soon as he disappeared into the crowd, Julia looked at Ben, her eyes full of uncertainty. "Ben, do you really believe we can fix this? That I can overcome everything?" Her voice trembled slightly as she spoke. "Yes, I believe. We can't let the past hold us back. I want to fight for us, for everything we can still be," Ben replied, holding her hand firmly. "We're not the same people we were before. We can change and grow together." The sincerity in his words made Julia's heart race. She realized that despite the mistakes they both made, there was still a spark of love between them, a connection that time and distance hadn't been able to erase. "So, what do we do now?" Julia asked, her voice soft. "Now, we open up to each other. Let's talk about everything, our fears, our dreams. We can't let any more rivals or insecurities separate us," Ben said, looking into her eyes with renewed determination. With a deep sigh, Julia nodded. "You're right. Let's start over, but this time with honesty." And so, under the bright lights of the city that had witnessed their story, they began to build a new chapter, ready to face whatever came their way, together. Reflecting on the reunion after betrayal, it is essential to ask, what did you really learn about yourself and the other person? Sometimes what seemed like a simple misunderstanding can reveal deep truths about our own weaknesses and strengths. Ask yourself, did this reunion bring clarity or just more confusion? How can you use this experience to grow and strengthen yourself? Remember, every challenge is an opportunity disguised as learning and self-discovery. Share your experiences in the comments, and if this story touched you in any way, check out the video that's appearing on your screen now. This is, in my opinion, one of the best stories I've ever told. If you liked what you just heard, you'll undoubtedly love this other story as well. So subscribe to the channel, click on the video that's on your screen now, and I'll see you in a few seconds.